I leaned against the hood of my truck, staring at the house I had spent the last 2 years building. It stood tall under the golden afternoon sun, an embodiment of patience, sacrifice, and dreams. Every beam, every brick, every nail, placed with the thought that this would be our forever home. Mine and Jessica's. It was finally finished. The dark wooden door, the wraparound porch with the white railings Jessica had insisted on, the large kitchen with the marble countertops she had picked out, every detail tailored to her tastes. But standing there, I felt nothing but exhaustion, an emptiness creeping in where pride should have been. Maybe it was because I'd poured so much of myself into this place that I had nothing left. I checked my watch. I had a few hours before I had to head back to our old house on Brighton Avenue. Jessica was supposed to meet me here later in the evening to officially move in, but I needed to grab some last-minute paperwork from the old place. Deed transfers, mortgage agreements, some utility forms. It was supposed to be a simple in-and-out trip, but I had this nagging feeling in my gut. Something had been off with her lately. At first, I chalked it up to stress. The house, the transition, the move, it was a lot. But then there were the little things. The way she suddenly started guarding her phone. The unexpected late nights at work when I knew for a fact she didn't have that kind of demanding job. The way she barely reacted when I told her the house was done, as if it was just another chore checked off a list. I pushed those thoughts aside and climbed into my truck, firing up the engine. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just tired. But deep down, I already knew better. The discovery. The drive back to Brighton Avenue felt longer than usual. Every red light seemed to stretch time. Every turn in the road leading me further into something I wasn't sure I wanted to face. I pulled up to the old house just as the sun began to dip behind the trees. The driveway was empty except for Jessica's car, but something about the way the curtains were drawn, the way the lights inside flickered, sent a chill down my spine. I left the truck running, telling myself I'd only be inside for a few minutes. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and immediately noticed the scent. Cologne. Not mine. My pulse quickened. The house was quiet, but not the comfortable kind of quiet. The kind that hides something. Then I heard it. A low murmur. A breathy laugh. Jessica's voice, but not in the way I was used to hearing it. I didn't even think. My feet moved on their own, carrying me down the hallway toward our bedroom. My hand clenched around the door handle, my knuckles white, and then I pushed it open. There they were. Jessica, and some guy I had never seen before. They froze, tangled in the sheets I had shared with her for years. For a second, none of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan above us. My vision tunneled. Every nerve in my body screamed, but I didn't explode. Not yet. Jessica's face turned white, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. The guy, a lean, younger-looking asshole with neatly trimmed hair and a smugness that made me want to rip him apart, grabbed the sheets to cover himself. Caleb, Jessica finally breathed, as if shocked that I was standing there. I stared at her. The woman I had built a house for. The woman I had sacrificed for. The woman who was supposed to be my partner. And she had destroyed everything. I took a step back. Then another. My mind raced, a tornado of thoughts swirling so fast I couldn't grab onto a single one. But one thing was clear. This wasn't ending here. I turned and walked out. For now, I didn't go back to the new house that night. Instead, I parked my truck at a bar on the edge of town and sat in silence, nursing a whiskey I barely tasted. My phone buzzed constantly. Calls, texts. Jessica, I assumed. I didn't check. My mind was already working, piecing things together. She had been too comfortable in that bed, too familiar with that man. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been going on for a while, and that meant I had time to prepare. By the time I walked out of that bar, I had a plan. This wasn't going to be a screaming match. There wasn't going to be an emotional breakdown. No, I was going to destroy her. Financially, emotionally, everything she thought she had, I was going to rip it out from under her. Jessica had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand in my motel room. The name flashing across the screen. Jessica. I let it ring. Then came the texts. Caleb, please. We need to talk. It's not what you think. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please answer me. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Didn't mean anything? I had spent 2 years building a future for us, while she spent her time spreading her legs for some other guy. I ignored her messages and instead picked up my laptop. If I was going to tear her world apart, I needed to start digging. And I had a feeling there was more dirt to find. I started with her phone records. Jessica wasn't careful enough to hide them from our shared account, and within minutes, I had a list of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, one that showed up frequently. I ran the number through a lookup service. Eric Miller. I didn't recognize the name, but a quick search told me everything I needed to know. He was a personal trainer at one of those high-end gyms Jessica had joined 6 months ago, the same time she started acting different. How cliché. But that wasn't the only thing I found. Jessica had been making large withdrawals from our joint bank account, amounts that didn't line up with our regular expenses. Thousands of dollars, taken out in cash. For what? I dug deeper, checking her Venmo history. Payments to Eric Miller. Some labeled as training sessions, others just with emojis, fire symbols, hearts. She was paying him. I didn't know if it was for his services as a trainer or for something more, but it didn't matter. It was enough. Enough to destroy her. I went back to the house. The new one. The one she would never live in. Jessica had texted me a dozen more times, but I still ignored her. Instead, I started moving things. My things. I changed the locks, called the bank to freeze our joint accounts, removed her access to anything tied to my name. By the time I was done, the house was no longer ours. It was mine. Then I did something I knew would shake her. I transferred ownership of our old house, the one where she betrayed me, solely to her name. Every last bit of debt, the remaining mortgage, the taxes, all hers. Then I sent her a text. Go home. The house is yours now. Every last piece of it. I imagined her confusion. The way her stomach must have dropped as she read the message. Then, a minute later, my phone buzzed again. What does that mean? Caleb, please talk to me. I don't want the old house. We have the new one. I smirked. No, Jessica. I have the new one. You can keep the place where you ed your trainer. ***. She called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Her panic had started, and it was only going to get worse. I wasn't done yet. I had spent years making sure we were financially stable. She had no idea how much of that was in my name alone. With a few more calls, I pulled back my investments from our shared funds, cashed out accounts, and left her with nothing but the debts she had ignored for years. Jessica was about to learn what it felt like to lose everything. And then, for the final nail in the coffin, I sent everything I had found to her family, her friends, even her employer. The texts, the payments, the calls, every bit of proof of her affair. It wasn't enough to ruin her financially. I wanted her to drown in the shame of what she had done. It didn't take long before the messages started rolling in. Her mother. Oh my God, Jessica, what have you done? Her best friend. WTF? You cheated on Caleb? Her boss, whose company had strict moral conduct policies. We need to talk first thing Monday. She was losing everything. And I had one. A week passed before I saw Jessica again. She showed up at the new house, pounding on the door. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess. She looked broken. Caleb, please, she sobbed. You can't do this to me. I stared at her through the glass. She had already done it to herself. You made your bed, I said coldly. Now lie in it. I closed the door in her face. As she broke down on the porch, I felt nothing. No guilt. No sympathy. Just the satisfaction of knowing she would never recover from this. And neither would I. Because love? Trust? Those were gone forever. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Please like, share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel.